So, Kevin, just once again with time, they'll be using this room very shortly. So, if you can,
I gotcha.
Coming down to 5 minutes, hopefully, and we can get moving. So, go ahead.
Well, good afternoon. It's an honor to be here and to speak to the legislature for the second time this week. I also want to thank the UC for bringing out quite a few UC students, especially from UC Davis. It's great to have those students here observing the state government and the university administration. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for the invitation to join. My name is Kevin Sabo. I'm a fourth year at UC Berkeley, and I'm here today as the sole representative of 250,000 students of the UC to share with you their perspective on this issue. I want to thank Assemblymember Gibson for beginning this process and for his commitment to transparency and passion on this subject. I also want to thank Chair Rodriguez and the other members who are here who understand that we can be critical of the UC while still wanting to make it a better and more accountable university system. Many of you and your colleagues described it perfectly at yesterday's press conference. We all love the University of California, but that is no reason to not hold it accountable as a public institution. We're committed to working with President Napolitano, as we always do, and her team to ensure that we make a world-class education accessible and affordable to all Californians. This will take help from you, the legislature, as well as Governor Brown. When I first read this audit, I was pretty stunned. Each page had me more in disbelief than the last, and it's clear that our university system, while still the greatest public system in the world, is also still letting far too many people down. My intent is not to take away from the great achievements of this university, and I will happily tell you about the things that students, faculty, and our staff are doing. But that's not what an audit is for. An audit points out the areas in which we are not serving our mission, and that is more worthy of a conversation. I know President Napolitano is committed to tackling these issues, and we invite both her and our legislative partners to engage the constituency most affected by these shortcomings, which are students. Assemblymember Gonzalez said it succinctly, as she tends to do, when she expressed that as a proud alum of the University of California, we cannot shy away from tough conversations that will ultimately make our higher education system stronger. Students aren't naive. We know that administrative salaries aren't entirely causing our budget problems, but state divestment from higher education is. Assemblymember Medina shared as much during his comments yesterday, and I thank him for his honest examination of the conditions that have led us to this point today. Let me say what I think the university should have said in this audit. While many of these points clearly show the university needs to change its behavior in some areas, these problems didn't simply start yesterday. They're systemic, they're deeply rooted, and they're far-reaching. President Napolitano has extended her hand when it comes to working with UC students many times, and we will fix these issues for which we have a seat at the table. Students will see new policies that can help change our course, which may require we bring in new leadership with bold ideas. But Sacramento must recognize its own shortcomings in this problem as well. While steady reinvestment has been positive over the last few years, we hope the legislature knows what students already know. Paying double what previous generations did is simply not enough. We live in a different era, and to be frank, many of our top students are admitted to the university of their dreams, to take out loans, to pay the cost of attendance, to work hard with part-time jobs, make incredible contributions to their home campus communities, and at the end of their undergraduate and graduate journeys, get jobs that don't compensate enough to allow them to get out of the crushing burden of historic student loan debt. This should not happen in the Golden State or in this country at all. The UC has existed for nearly a century and a half and was free for California residents under the provisions of the master plan for twice as long as it has had tuition. I want to recognize that there is a need for room for students from every walk of life and a global perspective. However, we should ensure that the University of California remains first and foremost a university for California. I will work with students in the university in the coming weeks to identify what we believe is a sensible and balanced approach, but we need to embrace the diversity we already have right here within our own state, rather than spending millions of dollars to import others. Anything short of this is an alarming farsightedness that ignores the talents of students of color, in particular, right here in California, who often lose to other states and institutions. I firmly believe that the challenges we face in providing a world-class public higher education are surmountable. If we work together, we can reinvest in California's future and prioritize reinvestment in the greatest guarantor of economic mobility and security, the best public universities in this country. We should also be proud we make such a quality higher education accessible and affordable to more Californians than any other states provide for their population. But to deliver in this, we must maintain a commitment to our shared and common goal of a more transparent and accountable University of California. To be clear, students need and demand leadership from decision makers in Sacramento as much as we do in Oakland. While power politics wage on between the UC and the state, students are still caught in between. Students are still hungry, students are still homeless, students are still struggling with mental health and being priced out of our education, and we need leaders to prioritize governance through policy and not politics in these difficult times. So thank you for the members of the legislature. I look forward to working on real and tangible changes that will help the UC and continue to stay the premier public university system in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to public comment. We have anybody, members of the public. I ask that you limit your comment to 1 minute as we're pressed up against time. So state your name and go ahead.
Chris Rosa, representing the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. State support for the University of California is a good investment. Last year, the state provided enrollment funding in its budget, and the University of California will enroll more California students. In the past, the UC faced significant reductions in rising costs as a result of the deep recession. Enrolling non-resident students combined with savings and efficiencies is how the UC handled their budget shortfall, and they maintained quality and ensure students will graduate in a timely manner with less debt than at other colleges and universities. And now the state is in a position to reinvest, and that's great. But still, the UC receives fewer state general fund dollars today than it did before the recession, and yet they enroll more California students. It's reasonable to expect the state to contribute to educating more Californians. So now is the time to move forward with reinvesting in growing the enrollment of California students. The UC is training the next generation of students to fill the demands of our most prized industries that will need a highly skilled workforce. California's hardworking students and high-achieving students and our economy deserve no less. The University of California is an investment that will pay dividends for our state. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Moira Top on behalf of Orange County Business Council. And the student president, I think, said it so eloquently when he said that when you graduate from a UC, you need a job. And there has been an incredibly long history of partnership between the business community and the UC system for its entire history. It's a symbiotic relationship that helps both universities as well as our economy. The entrepreneurial spirit, the innovation that occurs in California is a direct result of the relationships that a lot of businesses and a lot of technologies have with the UC system. And so while certainly I think we can all agree that very difficult decisions were made over the last several years by UC, we need to set on a path forward, looking forward and finding solutions that include additional funding, finding resources where you can find them within the schools, and move forward positively, because without that, we won't have those jobs for students to get, for graduates to get at the end of it. So we ask for your support in that and appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. Mike Robeson here on behalf of Qualcomm. I think Qualcomm would probably just associate their comments with the comments made by Senator Williams earlier. Qualcomm's a big supporter of the UC. Qualcomm exists because of the UC. The wireless technology has its roots in the UC system, and Qualcomm as a company survives because of the graduates of the UC system and working in Silicon Valley and in San Diego. And Qualcomm's the largest employer the largest private employer in San Diego. And really, associating myself with Moira, comments that Moira made, I think the audit points out exactly what Mr. Williams said, is that if we want to, for the UC to survive as a world-class institution, research institution, and to provide the economic growth that's needed to have the next Qualcomms in this state, then it's going to need money, and that money is general fund money. And so it's really up to the legislature to ensure that California residents are enrolled at the UC, and then it's really up to the legislature to ensure that the UC has sufficient money to maintain its world-class status, because if it doesn't, the system has to survive. And so they're going to have to enroll students who can pay their full freight and more than, additionally beyond the full freight. So that's what happened, and I think the audit points it out. And hopefully, going forward, there's enough money in the system to maintain its status and continue to grow. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Regina Wilson, and I'm the Executive Director and Chair of California Black Media. We sent a letter to your office yesterday just letting you know the concerns that we had with the audit report, other recommendations that we think should be possibly looked at or considered by whatever recommendations become implemented through this process, and really looking at the outreach budget. I didn't realize that $4.5 million were spent on recruitment. And I must say, I'm also a mother who has a 17-year-old, so I'm going through this process myself, and she didn't apply to any of the UC system schools, and I was very disappointed in her for not applying, but her reason was because she didn't think she would get in, and she went through a very rigorous program at McClatchy High School, is in the HIS program, has over a 3.5 GPA, and didn't apply because she didn't think she could get in. And so while I don't encourage that kind of behavior in our home, not applying, don't try, there's a perception issue, and I know that people may not agree with the report or what the auditor said, but there's a perception issue. And so I think that even within the African American and Latino communities, I think that there's going to need to be recruitment work and relationship building to ensure that you gain a bigger pool of African Americans and Latinos applying so that you can actually see these increase in these numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Zach Helder, UCLA's Student Body External Affairs Vice President. I have immense respect for the state of California, its officials and its institutions, and perhaps it's for this reason exactly that today I feel I must speak honestly to the student perspective from my campus and some from others. It is easy to demonize the UC system or its president, but it's much harder and much nobler to devote ourselves to real efforts to safeguard the future of public higher education. Students just want to graduate and secure their little part in the American dream, and not to be caught in the crossfire of politics. The state committed long ago to funding, at least in part, enrollment in public universities and the opportunity which that represents to us. Respectfully, Mr. Chairman, we expect the state to honor and to demonstrate its commitment to that cause. For years, it has fallen short. This audit skims over the unprecedented budget cuts that the state has wrought on UC students for years, and it misrepresents the standards to which admissions were applied to out-of-state students. If the state does, in fact, care about expanding access to the opportunity of a UC education, the state will restore to the UC its normal funding levels. The alternative, should the state cap non-resident enrollment, is a crippling of the UC's finances or the turning away of thousands of qualified California applicants, as Chancellor White of CSU has foreshadowed. The greatest victims of this mistake will be students, and I fear that the only winners will be politicians. Mr. Chairman, the state must do its part.
Thank you. Next, and just make sure we can limit it to a minute as we are running out of time here. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Avi Oved, and I currently serve as the UC Student Regent on the Board of Regents. I have firsthand knowledge of what the University of California is, from the classroom to the boardroom. And as someone who is oftentimes the first to acknowledge UC's shortcomings, in this case, I believe the UC does not deserve to be accused of fabricated narrative advanced by this audit. It would be unbecoming of this committee to take this audit for face value. We cannot view UC's policies in a vacuum, as if it is electing upon itself to make these tough decisions. UC has consistently exceeded its commitment to the California Master Plan, enrolling several thousand more residents than encouraged. In its attempts to recover its billion-dollar loss in state funding in 2008, notwithstanding inflation and growing operational costs, UC has been forced to rely on other forms of funding. Consider this. Non-resident tuition is $37,000. Resident tuition is $12,000. The UC's cost of instruction is $22,000. So in theory, non-resident students cover not only their cost of instruction, but $15,000 more, 50% more than the state's $10,000 allocation for a resident student, effectively opening an additional student seat for a California resident. Let me end by saying, if the legislature wants to reduce or eliminate the funds from non-resident tuition, then it must shoulder the responsibility for providing a credible path forward, replacing those revenues that ensure students to continue to get a quality education with quality support services. This university is not a factory or a corporation lusting for profits. It is first and foremost an institution of higher education and learning. The recent audit advanced by the state illustrates the failure to understand these truths. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Trent Kajikawa. I'm currently a graduating senior at UCLA, and I also serve as the elected Academic Affairs Vice President at UCLA. I'm not going to try and repeat points, but obviously I'm here today to speak on behalf of this audit. I understand the frustration of Californians who feel as though non-residents have taken the seats of California residents. Heck, 4 years ago when I was applying, I had that same sentiment. But after 3.5 years at UCLA, I come away conflicted with that idea. I've had classrooms where I've had to sit on the floor because there's over 300 plus students in my lecture hall. Even now, as a graduating senior, I'm waitlisted for 2 of my econ classes that I need to graduate. Hopefully I get in because this upcoming fall, hopefully I could attend the Graduate School of Education at Harvard. But even more so, as reiterated by a bunch of other students, I'm disappointed that the UC has not received funding as if it was as mentioned before, to pre-Great Recession levels. This, to me, is an alarming issue, and I hope that we all can look at specific solutions to address that. I implore you all to use the information provided by this audit wisely. Restricting non-resident enrollment will likely force the UC to either increase tuition, reduce total enrollment, including our California residents, or diminish the quality of the UC education. I ask you that you explore the reason why the UC has had to enroll non-resident students, and I hope that we can all come to a solution that ensures the long-lasting and far-reaching benefits that the UC provides to California residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members. I'm Marianne Massenberg with the UAW. The UAW represents 20,000 workers at UC, including 6,000 postdoctoral researchers and 14,000 graduate student teaching assistants and also undergraduate readers and tutors at all the campuses. Among our members, we represent both California residents, obviously, and non-residents who are employed in these positions. As a collective bargaining representative with UC for over 30 years, we share your frustration and that of many in the community about dealing with UC. But today, I am here because we strongly believe that this situation, the solution is for the state to increase funding for in-state residents, not to significantly or drastically cut the non-resident enrollment. Cutting the non-resident enrollment, as you've heard, will significantly reduce the money available. I also want to say, because I don't think it's really been said yet, because we represent non-residents in addition to residents, I would like you to consider in your deliberations the impact of these discussions on the currently enrolled non-resident students. People have told me in the last couple of weeks, since there's been a lot of press, that they feel unwelcome by these discussions, isolated, accused of being less qualified. They feel they're being somewhat scapegoated. I know that's not everyone's intent, but I just want to share with you what I'm hearing from our non-resident members. And certainly when we send many of our children off to other states, because not all of our kids go to UC or even apply, we expect them to be welcomed by those states. I think we should consider that here as well. And to keep in mind that most of the non-residents end up staying in California. California is a wonderful state. So we really can't afford to alienate our future residents who will work and contribute substantially to California's economy. One of our members, and forgive this analogy, said to me this week, we're a value not just as moneymakers or money contributors, we're a value culturally and academically to the university, and that she told me she hopes that the California doesn't try to build a wall around the University of California. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is John Varga. I'm a proud product of a UC education. Go Slugs. And I credit it in part with the reason why I'm here before you today as the legal director for Teamsters Local 2010. Teamsters Local 2010 members perform critical work throughout the university system in positions including administrative support, police dispatch, teaching, library assistants, painters, and cashiers. And the state auditor's report highlights the importance of fully and adequately funding the university so that it may fulfill its promise to the residents of California to provide the finest public education available in the country and perhaps in the world. Because the university's strength lies in its student body, its faculty, and the men and women committed to performing the work that makes the university work. And this is particularly true of the 14,000 University of California essential support workers and skilled trade workers represented by Teamsters Local 2010. Yet these women and men whose work makes the university work remain among the lowest paid in the state. And in fact, 92% of the university's clerical, administrative, and essential support employees do not earn enough to afford the basic necessities of life. In addition to being a magnificent place of learning, the university is the third largest employer in California. And so it is imperative that adequate funding be provided to the University of California so that it can be an engine of economic growth and good jobs in our state. The message of the state auditor's report is clear. The state of California must support public higher education because inadequate state funding of the University of California places the burden on California's students and workers who are least able to shoulder it. And so Teamsters Local 2010 urges the legislation to share that responsibility with the University of California. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you. Mira Morton here on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to talk a little bit and put this a little bit in context. So the UCs and the quality of their graduates are a huge draw for California employers. And so we think, this is a very important discussion. I think a lot of good points being raised on both sides. But we just want to make sure that we don't draw the wrong conclusions from the information that's out there and potentially then make reforms that could actually jeopardize the quality of the universities going forward. So I just want to point out three things to kind of keep in mind as we're continuing this conversation going forward. First of all, this is not just happening in California, and it's not just happening in the last 10 years. It's been happening in California for over 30 years, the disinvestment in higher education. But we actually have 43 of the 50 flagship state universities across the country have rising non-resident enrollment over the last decade. So it's not just California, it's happening everywhere. And actually, since 2005, according to the Public Policy Institute of California, state has divested about 30% a decline in its contribution to the main operating budget of the UCs. And that means efficiencies started before the recession. So I do question whether we can expect the UCs to be able to increase efficiencies to replace 30% decline of state contribution. I think that might be a big lift, especially since they started becoming more efficient long before the recession and we started watching. And the third thing I would point out is let's look at what happened to the other segments of higher education and also to our K-12 system during the recession, because none of those systems had the capacity to do this, to offset that revenue. We lost 30,000 teachers, counselors, librarians, administrators. We lost programs. We lost busing in the public school system. We had full-time faculty cut from the community colleges and from the CSU, from everywhere. They lost benefits. They lost raises. Huge, devastating impacts to those segments. And, I certainly think we need to, hold UC's feet to the fire, and they need to remember that their mission is to California and to its students. But to the extent that they're raising non-resident enrollment in order to maintain the quality of the education that they provide those students and make sure that they don't have to cut enrollment further, they are being loyal to that mission, and we should just keep that in mind as we continue ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deshaun Carr, and I'm a graduating senior at UC Davis. And I work for a program which is the Early Academic Outreach Program, which is funded through the state. The question I have is that what are we doing in the classrooms to make sure that these students have the eligibility requirements when we go out to because the schools that I go out to, I see students who don't have the requirements to apply to UC. So what can we do to increase enrollment through the UC? Because I'm a person who's from Sacramento, and I went to a high school that didn't really have college on the mindset. And so I just want to see what can we do, partnering with the legislature and UCOP, to see how we can increase more funding programs to go out to high schools and get the students to have the eligibility requirements to apply to UC.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Lei Vang, and I'm a graduating senior at UC Davis. Go Aggies. And I'm also working a part of the early academic outreach program. And what we do is we do go out to the high schools and we talk to the students. And a lot of the students that I've worked with, they are afraid that they will not get the fundings and that they're not competent enough to basically do well in college. And so I tell them that, I promise them that there are a lot of fundings and that they are ready for it. They're intelligent students. But I'll be graduating and I won't be there for them. So I'm here to urge and I expect that we increase fundings for our students so that we can expand access to higher education. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Hugo Hernandez, and I'm from Woodland, California. I'm a third-year student at UC Davis, and I currently also work with the Early Academic Outreach Program, where we develop and create programs for parents who speak Spanish and English, and also workshops for the students, as well, all from 8th grade through 12th grade. And we encourage GPA to have a high GPA, but we also emphasize the importance of extracurricular activities, leadership skills, and community service, which is really important when they apply for the university. But besides all this, all the time they ask and say, "Oh, how are we going to pay? Dinero, ¿cómo vamos a pagar? What is it? How can we afford college?" And it's one of the topics that they always talk about, and they always have questions for us. And we have a hard time saying, "Oh, there's Cal grants, there's all these grants, there's scholarships, there's this." So I will really, really urge you to really continue the funding. As for example, myself, I have 0 loans. I haven't taken a single loan. My mom doesn't make enough money to pay for what I have to pay for studies. So I hope that just like me, how I'm trying to pursue my career and get my diploma and pursue higher education, I want others to also pursue their education without money being an obstacle. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Micaiah Claremont. I'm currently a student at UC Davis as well. I also work under undergraduate admissions, and one question that we always receive in undergraduate admissions is how kids can help pay for their education. Of course, since it is a UC, we do have about a $13,000 tuition for UC Davis, and then out of state it's about $38,000. Students are always wondering, of course, how they can pay loans. Financial aid is available for most students. However, most students don't receive the total amount of financial aid in order to live comfortably, so let's focus completely on their studies and graduate within the 4 recommended years. Personally for me, I know my family isn't able to pay that, and I'm currently working 2 jobs. I recently applied for a 3rd in order to help fund myself and continue living relatively well during my college education. And of course, students need to be able to live comfortably and just with the sanity of themselves while maintaining college education. And I'd like to look more into funding for the school itself in order to make that more affordable for students and just more of an option after high school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members would like to public comment? So with that, we'll go ahead and close. With that, we had a very robust and spirited discussion, and this discussion probably can go on for the rest of the day. Along with that, I, along with taxpayers and dozens of whom I've heard from, continue to be concerned about the university's policies and practices that don't put our California students first. As I mentioned in my opening comments, I'm especially concerned about the UC admitting higher number of less qualified non-resident students. I've been very proud of our university system, and I don't want to see its reputation deteriorate because of unfair enrollment and financial practices. Although the university strongly disagrees with many of the findings and conclusions in the state auditor's report, it does not provide a significant proof to support these disagreements. I strongly believe that our prestigious public university system must show a sense of urgency and continue to modify its policies and practices to make sure our eligible California resident students come first. I also must continue to improve its transparency and equalize per-student funding, particularly at the campuses with higher concentration of minority students. As chair of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, I intend to continue monitoring the university response and the changes it makes. I am requesting the university provide the Auditor's Office a status report on implementing the recommendations and changes that they make in 4 months instead of the 6 months. I look forward to working with the university assistant, making sure it continues to move in the right direction, putting our California students first. I want to thank my Assembly and Senate colleagues for their informative dialogue today. I also want to thank the State Auditor and her staff for their contribution today. I also want to acknowledge and thank the representatives from the University of California and the UC Student Association. With that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.